The Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa, section 154. Who am I to myself? Just one of my sensations. My heart drains out helplessly, like a broken bucket. Think, feel, how everything wearies when it's defined. Section 155. Just as some people work because they're bored, I sometimes write because I have nothing to say. Daydreaming, which occurs naturally to people when they're not thinking, in me, takes written form, for I know how to dream in prose. And there are many sincere feelings and much genuine emotion that I extract from not feeling. There are moments when the emptiness of feeling oneself live attains the consistency of a positive thing. In the great men of action, namely the saints, who act with all of their emotion and not just part of it, this sense of life's nothingness leads to the infinite. They crown themselves with night and the stars, and anoint themselves with silence and solitude. In the great men of inaction, to whose number I humbly belong, the same feeling leads to the infinitesimal. Sensations are stretched like rubber bands to reveal the pores of their slack, false continuity. And in these moments, both types of men love sleep, as much as the common man who doesn't act and doesn't not act. Being a mere reflection of the generic existence of the human species, sleep is fusion with God. Nirvana, however it be called. Sleep is the slow analysis of sensations, whether used as an atomic science of the soul, or left to doze like a music of our will, a slow anagram of monotony. In my writing, I linger over the words as before shop windows I don't really look at, and what remains are half-meanings and quasi-expressions, like the colors of fabrics that I didn't actually see. Harmonious displays composed of I don't know what objects. In writing, I rock myself like a crazed mother, her dead child. One day, I don't know which, I found myself in this world, having lived unfeelingly from the time I was evidently born until then. When I asked where I was, everyone misled me, and they contradicted each other. When I asked them to tell me what I should do, they all spoke falsely, and each one said something different. When in bewilderment I stopped on the road, everyone was shocked that I didn't keep going to no one knew where, or else turn back. I, who'd woken up at the crossroads and didn't know where I'd come from. I saw that I was on stage and didn't know the part that everyone else recited straight off, also without knowing it. I saw that I was dressed as a page, but they didn't give me the queen and blamed me for not having her. I saw that I had a message in my hand to deliver, and when I told them that the sheet of paper was blank, they laughed at me. And I still don't know if they laughed because all sheets are blank, or because all messages are to be guessed. Finally, I sat down on the rock at the crossroads, as before the fireplace I never had, and I began all by myself to make paper boats with the lie they'd given me. No one would believe in me, not even as a liar, and there was no lake where I could try out my truth. lost in idle words, random metaphors, chained to shadows by a vague anxiety. Remnants of better times spent on I don't know what garden paths. Extinguished lamp whose gold gleams in the dark, in the memory of the dead light. Words, tossed not to the wind, but to the ground, dropped from limp fingers like dried leaves that had fallen on them from an invisibly infinite tree. Nostalgia for the pools of unknown farms. Heartfelt affection for what never happened. To live. And at least the hope that I might sleep soundly in Proserpina's bed. Section 156. What imperious queen, standing by her pawns, holds on to the memory of my broken life? I was the page boy of tree-lined paths that weren't enough for the soaring moments of my blue peace. Ships in the distance completed the sea that lapped my terraces, and in the clouds towards the south I lost my soul, like an oar dropped in the water. Section 157. To create in myself a nation with its own politics, parties, and revolutions, and to be all of it, everything, to be God in the real pantheism of this people I, to be the substance and movement of their bodies and their souls, of the very ground they tread and the acts they perform, to be everything, to be them and not them. This is one of the dreams I'm still far from realizing, and if I realized it, perhaps I would die. I'm not sure why, but it seems one couldn't live after committing such a great sacrilege against God, after usurping the divine power of being everything. What pleasure it would give me to create a Jesuitry of sensations. There are metaphors more real than the people who walk in the street. There are images tucked away in books that live more vividly than many men and women. There are phrases from literary works that have a positively human personality. There are passages from my own writings that chill me with fright. So distinctly do I feel them as people. So sharply outlined do they appear against the walls of my room at night, in the shadows. I've written sentences whose sound, read out loud or silently, impossible to hide their sound, can only be of something that has acquired absolute exteriority and a full-fledged soul. Why do I sometimes set forth contradictory and irreconcilable methods of dreaming and of learning to dream? Probably because I'm so used to feeling what's false as true, and what I dream as vividly as what I see, that I've lost the human distinction, false I believe, between truth and falsehood. For me, it's enough to perceive something clearly with my eyesight, or my hearing, or any of my other senses, in order to feel that it's real. It can even happen that I simultaneously feel two things that can't logically coexist. No matter. There are people who spend hours suffering because they can't be a figure in a painting or in one of the suits from a deck of cards. There are souls who suffer not being able to live today in the Middle Ages, as if this were a divine curse. I used to experience this kind of suffering, but no longer. I've moved beyond that level. But it does sadden me that I can't dream of myself as, say, two kings in different kingdoms that belong to universes with different kinds of space and time. Not to be able to achieve this truly makes me grieve. It smacks to me of going hungry. To visualize the inconceivable in dreams is one of the great triumphs that I, as advanced a dreamer as I am, only rarely attain. To dream, for example, that I'm simultaneously, severally, the man and the woman on a stroll that a man and a woman are taking along the river. To see myself at the same time, in the same way, with equal precision and without overlap, being equally but separately integrated into both things, as a conscious ship in a South Sea and a printed page from an old book. How absurd this seems, but everything is absurd, and dreaming least of all. Section 158. For a man who has ravaged Proserpina like Dis, even if only in his dreams, how can the love of an earthly woman be anything but a dream? Like Shelley, I loved Antigone before time was. Temporal loves were flat to my taste, all reminding me of what I'd lost. Section 159. Twice in my adolescence, which I feel so remotely, it seems like someone else's story that I read or was told. I enjoyed the humiliating grief of being in love. From my present vantage point, looking back to the past which I can no longer designate as long ago or recent, I think it was good that this experience of disillusion happened to me so early. Nothing happened except in what I felt. Outwardly speaking, legions of men have suffered the same inner torments, but through an experience that simultaneously involved my sensibility and intelligence, I realized early on that the imaginative life, however morbid it might seem, is the one that suits temperaments like mine. The fictions of my imagination, as it later developed, may weary me, but they don't hurt or humiliate. Impossible lovers can't possibly cheat on us or smile at us falsely or be calculating in their caresses. They never forsake us, and they don't die or disappear. Our soul's great anxieties are always cosmic cataclysms, upsetting the stars all around us and making the sun veer off course. In all souls that feel, fate, sooner or later, plays out an apocalypse of anxiety, with all heavens and worlds raining down over their disconsolation. To feel that you're superior, and to be treated by fate as supremely and incurably inferior. Who in such a plight can boast about being a man? Were I ever granted a flash of expressive power so great that it concentrated all art in me, I would write a eulogy to sleep. I know no greater pleasure in life than that of being able to sleep. The total snuffing out of life and the soul, the complete banishment of all beings and people, the night without memory or illusion, the absence of past and future. Section 160. The entire day, in all the desolation of its scattered and dull clouds, was filled with the news of revolution. Such reports, true or false, always fill me with a peculiar discomfort, a mixture of disdain and physical nausea. It galls my intelligence when someone imagines that things will change by shaking them up. Violence of whatever sort has always been for me a flagrant form of human stupidity. All revolutionaries, for that matter, are stupid, as are all reformers to a lesser extent, lesser because they're less troublesome. Revolutionary or reformer, the error is the same. Unable to dominate and reform his own attitude towards life, which is everything, or his own being, which is almost everything, he flees devoting himself to modifying others and the outside world. Every revolutionary and reformer is a fugitive. To fight for change is to be incapable of changing oneself. To reform is to be beyond repair. A sensitive and honest-minded man, if he's concerned about evil and injustice in the world, will naturally begin his campaign against them by eliminating them at their nearest source, his own person. This task will take his entire life. Everything for us is in our concept of the world. To modify our concept of the world is to modify the world for us, or simply to modify the world, since it will never be, for us, anything but what it is for us. That inner justice we summon to write a fluent and beautiful page, that true reformation of enlivening our dead sensibility, these things are the truth, our truth, the only truth. Everything else in the world is scenery, picture frames for our feelings, book bindings for our thoughts. And this is true, whether it be the colorful scenery of beings and things, fields, houses, posters, clothes, or the colorless scenery of monotonous souls that periodically rise to the surface with hackneyed words and gestures, then sink back down into the fundamental stupidity of human expression. Revolution? Change? What I really want, with all my heart, is for the atonic clouds to stop grayly lathering the sky. What I want is to see the blue emerge, a truth that is clear and sure, because it is nothing and wants nothing. Section 161. Nothing irks me more than the vocabulary of social responsibility. The very word duty is unpleasant to me, like an unwanted guest. But the terms civic duty, solidarity, humanitarianism, and others of the same ilk disgust me, like rubbish dumped out of a window right on top of me. I'm offended by the implicit assumption that these expressions pertain to me, that I should find them worthwhile and even meaningful. I recently saw in a toy shop window some objects that reminded me exactly of what these expressions are. Make-believe dishes filled with make-believe tidbits for the miniature table of a doll. For the real, sensual, vain, and selfish man, the friend of others because he has the gift of speech, and the enemy of others because he has the gift of life. What is there to gain from playing with the dolls of hollow and meaningless words? Government is based on two things: restraint and deception. The problem with those glittering expressions is that they neither restrain nor deceive. At most, they intoxicate, which is something else again. If there's one thing I hate, it's a reformer. A reformer is a man who sees the world's superficial ills and sets out to cure them by aggravating the more basic ills. A doctor tries to bring a sick body into conformity with a normal, healthy body. But we don't know what's healthy or sick in the social sphere. I see humanity as merely one of nature's latest schools of decorative painting. I don't distinguish in any fundamental way between a man and a tree. And I naturally prefer whichever is more decorative, whichever interests my thinking eyes. If the tree is more interesting to me than the man, I'm sorrier to see the tree felled than to see the man die. There are departing sunsets that grieve me more than the deaths of children. I keep my own feelings out of everything in order to be able to feel. I almost reproach myself for writing these sketchy reflections in this moment, when a light breeze rising from the afternoon's depths begins to take on color. In fact, it's not the breeze that takes on color, but the air through which it hesitantly glides. I feel, however, as if the breeze were being colored, so that's what I say. For I have to say what I feel, given that I'm I. Section 162. All of life's unpleasant experiences, when we make fools of ourselves, act thoughtlessly, or lapse in our observance of some virtue, should be regarded as mere external accidents which can't affect the substance of our soul. We should see them as toothaches or calluses of life, as things that bother us but remain outside us, even though they're ours, or that only our organic existence need consider and our vital functions worry about. When we achieve this attitude, which in essence is that of the mystics, we're protected not only from the world, but also from ourselves. For we've conquered what is foreign in us, contrary and external to us, and therefore our enemy. Horace said that the just man will remain undaunted even if the world crumbles all around him. Although the image is absurd, the point is valid. Even if what we pretend to be, because we coexist with others, crumbles around us, we should remain undaunted, not because we're just, but because we're ourselves. And to be ourselves means having nothing to do with external things that crumble, even if they crumble right on top of what for them we are. For superior men, life should be a dream that spurns confrontations. Section 163. Direct experience is an evasion or hiding place for those without any imagination. Reading about the risks incurred by a man who hunts tigers, I feel all the risks worth feeling, save the actual physical risk, which wasn't really worth feeling, for it vanished without a trace. Men of action are the involuntary slaves of the men of reason. The worth of things depends on their interpretation. Certain men make things which other men invest with meaning, bringing them to life. To narrate is to create, while to live is merely to be lived. Section 164. Inaction makes up for everything. Not acting gives us everything. To imagine is everything, as long as it doesn't tend towards actions. No one can be king of the world except in dreams. And every one of us who really knows himself wants to be king of the world. To imagine without being is the throne. To desire without wanting is the crown. We have what we renounce, for we conserve it eternally intact in our dreams, by the light of the sun that isn't, or of the moon that cannot be. Section 165. Whether I like it or not, everything that isn't my soul is no more for me than scenery and decoration. Through rational thought, I can recognize that a man is a living being just like me, but for my true involuntary self, he has always had less importance than a tree, if the tree is more beautiful. That's why I've always seen human events, the great collective tragedies of history, or what we make of history, the colorful friezes with no soul in the figures that appear there. I've never thought twice about anything tragic that has happened in China. It's just scenery in the distance, even if painted with blood and disease. With ironic sadness, I remember a workers' demonstration carried out with I don't know how much sincerity, for I find it hard to admit sincerity in collective endeavors, given that the individual, all by himself, is the only entity capable of feeling. It was a teeming and rowdy group of animated idiots who passed by my outsider's indifference, shouting various things. I instantly felt disgusted. They weren't even sufficiently dirty. Those who truly suffer don't form a group or go around as a mob. Those who suffer, suffer alone. What a pathetic group. What a lack of humanity and true pain. They were real and therefore unbelievable. No one could ever use them for the scene of a novel or descriptive backdrop. They went by like rubbish in a river, in the river of life. And to see them go by made me sick to my stomach and profoundly sleepy.